the serve, the serve, the serve. Do you feel like your serve just isn't producing the power and spin that it should, even when you make clean contact? Well, one of the sneakiest reasons might be a shallow racket drop. And today I'll be sharing the 3 keys that help fix my racket drop so that you can add more pace and spin without muscling the ball. Hey, it's me again, Mehrban from the Tennis Files podcast. And in our last episode of the show, we talked about how to fix an early racket drop. And in this one, I want to stay on that theme, but switch gears to the shallow racket drop. So the early racket drop, as we discussed, happens when you drop the racket before pushing up with your legs. Your body isn't synced and the kinetic chain breaks down. If you missed that, then definitely go back and listen to that episode. It's a key piece of your serve puzzle. However, the shallow racket drop is different. Here, your racket simply isn't dropping as deep as it can. And when you don't get that full drop, you're leaving power and spin on the table. Imagine pulling back a bowstring only halfway. You just can't generate the same force. And so when you look at the pros, of course, they also have great flexibility and mobility. But when you look at the pros, their racket drop is generally quite deep. Whereas if you look at a lot of amateur players, their racket drop is much more shallow. And of course, the former have a lot more power and spin than the latter. So why does a deep racket drop matter? It's because a deep racket drop stores elastic energy in your shoulder and torso. Just think of it like stretching a rubber band to its limit before letting it snap. So of course, the deeper and looser as well that the drop is, the more whip, as Stewie would say, cool whip, the more whip you can create on contact. And that whip turns into pace and spin without you feeling like you're forcing the serve. So I want to give you again these 3 keys that really help me. And, this is speaking from actual experience. I have struggled with the racket drop for a long time. I played a ton of junior tennis, college tennis, and especially, in the juniors where you're really developing the technique. I was all about getting the serve in. And so then I developed a lot of suboptimal habits with my serve that I've had to spend a ton of time and effort and investment in. So I'm giving you what works here for me. So key number 1, lift the elbow higher in the trophy position. So a lot of shallow racket drops start with a low elbow in the trophy position. Now, if your elbow starts too low, as my coach Hyan told me, then the racket just doesn't have enough space to travel deep behind your back. It doesn't have as much space to drop. So by lifting the elbow slightly higher and also make sure to keep your arm relaxed, you give the racket a longer path to accelerate. And when I first filmed my serve, I noticed that my elbow was quite low. It was either level with my shoulder or even lower than that. And lifting it just a few inches felt weird at first, like I was exaggerating. But often it's important to exaggerate when you're making technical changes so that you just veer off into the correct way rather than the wrong way. But within a couple of sessions, my the racket drop naturally fell deeper. And I felt the ball, exploding off the strings. So the drill that I want to give you along with this key tip here is to pause in the trophy position. So that this drill is where you serve without a ball, get into your trophy position, check that the elbow is slightly above shoulder level, then slowly let the racket fall, repeat until it feels automatic. Then key number 2 is to relax the arm and let gravity work. So the tension is the enemy of a deep drop. If your arm muscles are tight, they resist gravity and the racket stalls often halfway. But a loose arm lets the racket head fall naturally using its own weight to create whip. And, I just was working on this today, actually, an hour ago before filming, this podcast episode. One of the big things I was working on was when my arm was in the trophy position, really trying to make sure that my arm was loose, and that really helped me with a loose throwing motion, which of course is going to give you a lot more power and spin. Just imagine, a baseball player throwing a baseball and they're super tight in their arm. They're not going to throw it that hard. You see all these baseball players with their pitches or their throws, they're loose, and that enables them to generate a lot of whip. Same with tennis serves. So I used to grip the racket even recently, like I was holding onto it for dear life, and then my drop was stuck halfway and my serve felt like I was pushing the ball. So when I consciously loosened my grip and focused on relaxing my forearm and really my whole arm, the racket started dropping lower without me even really trying, and my serve speed jumped instantly. So the drill here is loose arm shadow swing. So without a ball, again, hold the racket with only your thumb and 2 fingers. I would suggest your index finger and middle finger. And shadow the serve, letting the racket drop entirely from its own weight. This trains relaxation. Key number 3, keep the hand near the ear during the drop. I found this one to be very helpful. And actually, I remember both Peter Freeman, my good buddy from Crunch Time Coaching, as well as the fellas at Racket Flex, Data and Daytree, they had mentioned this. So one subtle but huge cause of a shallow drop is letting your hand drift away from your head. You also have probably heard of Ryan Reed from 2 Minute Tennis talking about using the birthday hat. It's a similar concept. So again, when you let the racket drift away from your head and kind of, if you're in video, you could probably see this, but like more to the side to where you're pancaking, which obviously is not good. When you let that happen, then the drop path, the racket drop shortens and flattens out. I mean, if you just try, bending your, elbow back, you're not getting a very deep drop. But keeping the hand close to the ear helps keep the drop vertical and full. So again, it's kind of like, almost doing like a bicep curl in a way, but you're just really letting your hand fall towards your ear. And that is going to help you a lot. So when I first worked on this, I felt like my arm was too close to my head, but after a few reps, it got much better. And also when I compared the video, it was insane. The drop was, twice as deep, and I could hear the difference in the pop off of my strings of the ball. So really, really helpful tip there too. When you drop the racket, try to get the hand to drop towards the ear. And that's really going to help a lot. So a drill that I like for this and that I just did today is the wall proximity drill. I call it, at least. Maybe others call it that too. I don't know. But you stand sideways and about, I'd say like 2 feet, maybe just measure 2 steps from a wall or the fence, and then shadow your serve. So what's going to happen here is you're going to try to keep your hand close enough to your ear when you drop the racket, so that your racket doesn't touch the wall during the drop. So if you are, let's say, a right-hander, you're actually going to stand sideways to where the wall or the fence is behind your back, so that naturally, when you drop the racket, you can't drop it too far to the side. Otherwise, it's going to hit the fence. So this is going to force you to have a more tight vertical motion, let's say, during the racket drop. So that's a great drill. I would just suggest you do that a ton. I mean, 20 reps or so, and then go and hit serves. Notice a big difference there. And also just to touch upon, another quick, like an additional tip, let's say, is you do want to sync the racket drop with the leg drive, as I talked about in the previous episode. So even though shallow and early racket drops are different issues, the timing still does matter. So, you can work on the early racket drop separately with the shallow racket drop. But then if you can sync your drop with your upward leg drive so that you do those at the same exact time, then you're going to get a really big burst of power from the ground up. So film yourself to make sure the racket is dropping as your legs are pushing. Don't drop the racket earlier than that. And that will be excellent when you get to that stage. But, like I mentioned, work on one, then the other. It's really hard to work on both a shallow racket drop and timing the racket drop with the exploding the leg upwards. So just to recap, remember, lift the elbow higher in the trophy position. It's often, people get their elbows stuck down low and then you don't have room to drop the racket. Second, relax the arm and let gravity do the work. And then third, do that pretty much the bicep curl essentially. Obviously, it's like a loose bicep curl. You don't want to do it with tension, and keep your hand near your ear when you're doing that racket drop. So it's again, from the trophy position, it's quite a relaxed drop to where the hand is going near the ear, and it's essentially a relaxed bicep flex or curl. So fixing the shallow racket drop will make your serve feel much smoother, much faster, and much more effortless. Trust me, when I finally got a deeper racket drop, then it helped so much with the power and spin. So, and again, if you haven't yet, check out the last episode on fixing an early racket drop. It pairs perfectly with this one. But again, it will take you a lot of time and a lot of effort, for most of you anyway. I mean, pretty much all of you, I'm sure, to get the one down and then the other down and then sync them up with the early racket drop issue and the shallow racket drop issue. So also, if you did enjoy this episode, I would really appreciate it if you would subscribe to the Tennis Files podcast. If you are not subscribed, or leave a review at tennisfiles.com/Apple Podcasts with an S at the end, because that really would help the show a lot. So I appreciate that. Really appreciate you listening to the show. And I do want to grab this quote that I always leave a quote at the end of the show. And this one is by Confucius. Funny enough, I did a collab with my college teammate, Mike. So shout out to Mike if you're listening, where he played the guitar and I read out some Confucius type quotes. But Confucius said here anyway, it does not matter how slowly you go as long as you do not stop. And I think that's huge as well. You think about the person mining for diamonds or whatever they're trying to get, and you see the one picture of the person who's walking away when they're millimeters away from breaking through, and you just don't know sometimes when that's going to be. So keep progressing, and that's the main thing, and trying hard and problem solving. So thanks so much for listening, and I'll see you on the next episode of the Tennis Files podcast. This is your host, mehrban signing out.